Why did you feel the need to write this book?
I refer to as a literary pugilist, which is to say the only two things I've been really good at in my life are writing and boxing and writing. So I'm a writer, I'm a boxer. Now I don't fight, I train boxers, both recreationally and competitive boxers. My father died, and as I watched my father die with my mom and prayed over him as he died, I just was looking at him thinking, the really major things in life that I wanted him to be alive for, he's not going to be alive for. I mean, I always intended to have been married and have children, and he had not seen me do that. And I hadn't accomplished a number of things I was going to accomplish, and one of them was publishing a book. You know, I had an argument one time years earlier. He was asking me how come I hadn't published any books yet. You know, at this point in my life, I should have been able to publish 5 novels or other books by now. And just looking at him dying, I'm saying to myself, I need more time. There's not enough time. I have no excuse. I procrastinate enough in my life. I have to write a book and get one published. And whether it's massively successful or not, it just has to be done and then move on to the next thing. After he died, that first day, I wrote the first line. I knew I was going to write the book, but I mourned over the following year. The end of that year came up. I just said to myself, okay, I've mourned enough. I've procrastinated enough. When the next year hits, immediately I'm going to write this book. I knew what was going to be there. I knew the story. And then the poems had been written over 2017 to 2020. And so I just plugged the poems in, and the story is kind of wrapped around the poems. We refer to this as a story, as a saga wrapped around a package of poems guarded by angels. Let me read the first poem in this book. It's called The Perfect Metaphor. I wrote it on August 24th of 2017. The perfect metaphor to describe boxing is jazz. There is a rhythm to every fight. I learned this from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White. A fighter has a rhythm, and the only way to beat him is for you to break it and establish your own. That's where improvisation begins. No one knows where it will lead or where it will end. Jazz is the perfect metaphor to describe boxing. Every fight has its rhythm, upon which is added improvisation. I learned that from Dennis Preston, who learned it from Rock White, who practiced collaboration with Emma Guinness and Bobby Zamora, the two men who taught me to fight. To get back to the question of fatherhood or my relationship with my dad, as you can tell from the book, I was very close to him. I love him very much and very grateful for everything that he gave to me and the value of his presence in my life. Christianity is always under attack. The 20th century into the 21st century, more Christians have been martyred for their Christianity than in the previous 19 centuries combined. The last 50 years, 100 years or so, as time gone by in the 20th century, there's been just absolute hostility towards Christianity. A lot of it has been Marxist-based. And the truth is that any situation that subordinates the family to the government, that makes the government control everything, even the government controlling education over the family, without family input, without the family authority, and without mother and father together with children, is something that weakens all of us. So I can't support it. So that means I'm not going to support corporate dominance of anything either.
It's horrendous in a so-called Christian nation that you will be persecuted just to pray in your mind outside an abortion clinic.
There was a lady that was in London, right, and she was standing there, and the cops said, "Are you praying?" She said yes. He said, "Then I'm going to arrest her." I was doing left-wing political activism during my mid-20s, early 30s. There was an anti-globalism kind of attitude there, and now that Donald Trump comes along and gets elected president, and all these people who were very anti-globalist at that time.
It's become reverse, you know. The ones that was trying to get rid of the globalization is now harassing the one that tried to get rid of globalization.
Yeah, the principle of subsidiarity, the decentralization of power. Local issues are best solved local. People should be able to use the resources around them as best they can for their families. You have your business and generate your own income and support yourself with your family. Have your family working on that with you. Family business, strong family.
To be controversial today isn't hard. It's just to be a sane person and have traditional values. That's counterculture today. I'm your host, Mattias Liborn, and this is the Metanoia Path Hello, and welcome back to the Metanoia Path podcast with me, Matthias Lidborn. Today we are joined by Mark Connor, who is a former boxer and also he is a boxing coach. He trained professional boxers, and Mark was also the 2020 boxing inductee into Massiani's St. Paul's Sports Halls of Fame. He's also a board member of the Minnesota Boxing Hall of Fame and a six-time Midwest Golden Gloves champion, and he was a participant in the 1987 National Golden Gloves with 102 amateur fights and one professional fight. He also is author. So in this episode we will talk about his newly published book. It's About Time. 1 million copies sold for Dad. So with no further ado, here's the episode. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the Metanoia Path podcast. Today I have with me Mark Connor, and we will have a little discussion around his published book. It's About Time. And welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Matthias. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on here. So, how we started to connect was through your manager. He contacted me through my podcast mail, and he told me that you had listened to one of my episodes and struck a chord with you, and wanted to come on the podcast. And he said that it would be a good match, and then he sent me a PDF file of your published book, and I can just confirm and say that we have many similarities, both spiritually and let's say like discipline-wise, and also actually we started out boxing at the same time, actually, like 10 years old. So that was so I read your book. I really enjoyed it, and I really like how you structured the book through your experiences and your life, and with these poems in which I'm very interested in hear more about. So if you just want to start off, Mark, who are you, and why did you feel the need to write this book?
Okay, well, like you said, my name's Mark Connor. I'm what I refer to as a literary pugilist, which is to say the only two things I've been really good at in my life are boxing and writing. So I'm a writer, I'm a boxer. I now I don't fight. I train boxers, and I both recreationally and competitive boxers. And uh, what made me my father died, and as I watched my father die with my mom and prayed over him as he died, I just was looking at him thinking the really major things in life that I wanted him to be alive for, he's not going to be alive for. I mean, I had always intended to have been married and have children, and he had not seen me do that. My brother uh, has children. He has a boy that just turned 21, and he's got a daughter that's turning 19. And but I hadn't done that yet, and I hadn't accomplished a number of things I was going to accomplish, and one of them was publishing a book. And I've had a number of books that I've worked on that have not fully brought to the point where I thought they're fully revised and so forth. And I had an argument one time years earlier. He was asking me how come I hadn't published any books yet. At this point in my life, I should have been able to have published 5 novels or other books by now. And just looking at him dying, I'm saying to myself, I need more time. There's just not enough time. And I I have no excuse. I procrastinate enough in my life. I have to write a book and get one published, and whether it's massively successful or not, it just has to be done, and then move on to the next thing. And so, as I after he died, that first day, I wrote the first line, and I knew I was going to write the book, but I waited. I mourned over the following year, and I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. My dad's from St. Paul. My mom's from Minneapolis, so I'm a product of the Twin Cities. And as you know, that was September 30th of 2019 that he died. And then um, the way the world was going at the time, and the way the atmosphere of the United States was at the time, um, people were kind of at each other's throats, and quite antagonized. And we had the president was impeached, and then the year changed over to 2020. I'm mourning at that time, and all of a sudden there's this shutdown around the world over this virus, and then uh, I'm kind of adjusting to that. Then all of a sudden, um, there was death of the death of this guy in Minneapolis that sparked all these riots that happened around the world. And my mother grew up. Well, her family was from the Catholic parish, Holy Rosary, that was about 7 blocks, I think it is, north of where the police station was burnt down. And my father grew up across the street from uh, St. Columba Catholic Church and Parish in St. Paul, across the street from that parish, 5 blocks north of where the main fires were in St. Paul. So kind of all this kind of stuff happened right that was really significant to the world, happened right where I'm from. And as I was mourning my dad, and as the end of that year came up, I just said to myself, okay, I've mourned enough. I've procrastinated enough. When the next year hits, immediately I'm going to write this book. So it wasn't until, I believe, the 9th of February until about the 29th of March of 2021, when I sat down every day and wrote it. I knew what was going to be there. I knew the story. And then the poems had been written over, some much earlier, but many of them over the recent years, from 2017 to 2020. And so I just plugged the poems in, and the story is kind of wrapped around the poems. So we refer to this as a story, as a saga wrapped around a package of poems guarded by angels. And the theme of guardian angels is kind of is not kind of, it actually is running through the book. And so it reads like a novel. It's very short. I mean, um, the way the I was actually hoping it was going to be laid out in a manner that it would be more pages, because it's about 130-page manuscript, but it's 86 pages in the book. But it's a pretty deep book, I think you would have noticed, and I think people will like it. And it's about love, family, and life. There's a lot about my father's influence on me, and different conversations we had over the years, both in childhood and experiences in childhood, but also quite a bit in adulthood. And also, it talks about boxing, my pursuit of writing as a vocation in life. And then also, it deals with time I spent in the Native American Indian community, where I kind of explored the Lakota spiritual tradition, and learned a lot about that. I worked for 13 years in a Native American Indian homeless shelter in St. Paul for kids aged 5 to 17. And and so that's part of why I talk about the riots at the end, because I was called out, asked to go and guard buildings with American Indian movement in South Minneapolis after the police station was burnt down. So it's pretty interesting stuff. It's all kind of wrapped into one. All this kind of stuff. I talk about the Irish heritage and influence in St. Paul, and kind of the Catholic kind of culture of the city of St. Paul, and how that um, intertwines with the rest of American culture. Um, and but it's all the stuff I'm talking about is kind of deep, and it's kind of stuff we can have long conversations about, but it's all in 86 pages. It's a pretty short book. So I'd like to tell people, get a copy of it, and you'll love it, or else, and you'll be able to read it fast, or else, it'll be something good to read at night because it can put you to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, and
That's a joke. To put you to sleep.
yeah, okay. I'm kind of slow boy, so so, but it's uh, I can imagine. I have this thought for myself that um, I may or may not have started writing a book, but um, you want it's very compelling to try to make a book that is managed to uh, put in everything, every thought you have, every experience you have in details and so forth. But that's not always quality. And a short book, people will, I think, read it more diligently, uh, more than once, and will get more out of a short book than a long book that you may not really read it and be present with the words when you read it at that time, and you just read it one time because it's such an endeavor to read like a 500-page book for most people nowadays. uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's quality over quantity, as they say, so. And I actually I've only read it one time, and I think actually I will get it in in
Hard
uh,
copy.
yeah, hard copy. I love books, and I like to read books and have it in my hand when I read it. I try to avoid the screens and so forth. So it's
Right.
a kind of a hustle of reading it in a PDF. So I'm looking forward to read it again in a real format, so to say. So, and I think this is it's very how you say in English, condensed or dense. When you have
Yeah.
a short page, but it's very not informative, but it's very pregnant, if you can say it like that. It's there's so
Right.
much to touch on in a yeah, in a
Condensed. I think it's yeah, you said it's condensed, which means it's short, so it's small. But then you said also dense, which means it's got a lot in there. It's kind of it's deep.
yeah.
You know. Yeah. Yeah. I and I mean, my father used to like to joke about me and say, "Yeah, so in the United States, there's in U.S. English, there's a saying about people as a compliment. He's a man of few words." And my dad used to like to play on that as a joke and say, "Yeah, Mark, he's a man of a few thousand words." Um, you know, because because I will take time. I'll start telling people stories face to face at times, and I start going into details, and then I start thinking of different details that had something to do with the event. So I'll go into that detail and sometimes lose my stream of thought because I'm adding some context to the situation, but then I bring it back. I've got to bring it back to what it really, how it coincides with the main point I'm making. And I believe that with this book, I have some kind of tangential, kind of roundabout ways of telling things, but that I was able to do it in a way where I condensed things and took out some of the unnecessary details so that I could get the main points in there. And it's a really hard thing to do, but I felt really good about that with this book, like I actually accomplished that. And I do believe that what I've expressed here is what my personal worldview is, and my personal worldview ultimately it's a Catholic view. I had this time where I found this, what I believe is a legitimacy in the uh, indigenous American religious spiritual tradition, in that um, it's a worship of God, although it's a different understanding of God. It's similar to Christian. There are similarities to Christianity. There are similarities and dissimilarities in that you find throughout religions. But I believe that through informed by that experience and then re-embracing my Catholic faith, that what I'm expressing is a view of humanity that recognizes the uh, inherent uh, uh, dignity of the human person, right? And it's my view of the world, it's my view of what reality is, and I believe that I achieved the goal that I had with this book is that um, I'm showing that with truthfully and honestly, and so that the reader, upon finishing the book, will if not agreeing with everything that I say or everything I observe, will still feel as if as a reader, that each reader will feel respected walking away from the book, and also walk away with a greater sense of hope. That's what I'm really trying to accomplish with this book. And I mean, it's like it just I'm it's about time, and then parentheses I write millions of copies sold for dad, which kind of implies to people when they look at it, it might imply that millions have sold, which is not what it means. And it, although um it's not meant to be necessarily a psychological trick to get someone to buy it, although that would work. I'd be happy if it did. But it, it's a logical fallacy. It's an amphibole, which is to say, it's got more than one meaning, because it could mean that, but it also means it's about time that happened, and it's about time that it's about time that I published a book. That's really kind of the meaning of it, and uh, all this kind of, my father died, and so I'm talking about the value of fatherhood, the necessity of the presence of a father in a family and in children's lives, and how important it is and how beneficial it is to have both parents loving each other, and married and uh, raising the children together, because we're all combinations of our parents. That's what we are as children, and it's an inescapable reality. And we're living in a world where people are actually uh, it's very dangerous. I mean, people are trying to make it general accepted reality across the world that you as an individual can create your own reality, and that it's legitimate, that there isn't hard set reality that's beyond our control. you know and uh so that's what I'm getting at with this. I really felt, as I wrote this book, um I was going to just write this book and express something about where I am in my life and my father and what I really want in my life. But then, before I wrote it, the riots happened, and I started looking around. I mean, I'm walking around uh, areas of the of um, my metropolitan area, and then particularly in Minneapolis, which is not the city I grew up in, but it's my mother's city. And it looks like there's just been this, bombing, this war, like we just had this. We're in the middle of a war, and as I was watching that, walking in the midst of that with all these crowds out, and we actually had guns because the police weren't there to protect anything, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and 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 when that happened, I'd said to myself, I had to include some of that in the book, and what I'm really offering with this book um is just the value of the simplicity of life, and just finding someone with whom you can unite into children and have a
Yeah,
family, and families being able to have control over their lives, a little bit of property and a little bit of ability to take care of themselves. And that's really the value of that's it's pretty simple, but that's really what freedom is about. What makes people happy, and what actually makes communities, and then as communities grow, towns and nations strong, right? So.
exactly, exactly. And with with this book you wrote, that what you described there, it was what the takeaway from the book actually was that, or like this, when I read it, it was it was over quickly, but it felt that I had read a much longer book. And so you nailed it with the way you wrote, and I can relate to that. With trying to get all the context, try to get into details when you tell someone something, because many subtle things have great implications, right? So
Mhm.
that's a hard way to put in a book of few pages. And I felt like after I read it, it felt like I had read a longer book, but it took me no time to read it. But I will revisit it, as I said. And it's a great message. I think that's also one big takeaway I take from it is it's a great message. It's about time. You can tell that, especially to young males today,
Yeah.
the yeah, don't procrastinate. And we are somewhat in the same boat, you and I, because
Mhm.
we don't have children. And you also write in your book that you want to start a family and everything like that, and try to find a Catholic wife and so forth.
Yeah.
And so we're in quite in the same boat there. And it was I can feel that it can be some kind of stress, because uh, if I just talk from my own vantage point, I always had the urge to have children, but it wasn't just the right time, not the right partner or something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
But you can't cherry pick like that. That is a construction of the modern world, or something.
Yeah.
It's a symptom of the modern degenerated, yeah, a world in that is degenerated, becoming less
Right.
good, so to say. Yeah. So it's about time, and don't overthink those things too much as a young male either, because if and for a person like you, when I read the book, I get the image that you are very disciplined. You are very you're very diligent in everything you do. You try to manage many things at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's like everything you do in life is your life, and everything you don't do is the sacrifice for what you do.
Mhm.
So it's not just a message to like a younger generation, but also for like it can also be a good message for a dad, for instance, that get hung up in over excess of work. That's also very
Yeah.
common. Yeah. So it was, and one more thing that, just not to go too long, but I talked to a dear friend of mine, uh, also a background in boxing, Thai boxing, and so forth.
Mm.
And actually, we had this encounter, me and him, that the first time we met was at the first. Actually, it was like this. Me and him had gone on the same boxing club, but I were younger when I started, and he was a bit older, so we never were in that boxing club at the same time. But the first time we met, was when we both started Thai boxing,
Hmm.
and then we were the two only persons outside that gym that waited for the trainer to come. So on that day on forward, we were very good friends, and what we both saw when we first came into this Thai boxing gym, and is common in boxing gyms and Thai boxing and those more underground forms of martial arts,
Yeah.
um, is that you see many young men, and when you dwell in those places, you can see one common thing, and it is we talked about this, and it's actually, to be just blunt, uh, seeking a role model.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have some kind of, yeah, not daddy issues, maybe sometime, but maybe don't have the best male, best father figure. Maybe
Right.
a guy that doesn't have a father, or a father that don't care that much about children, and it's a great place for young males to dwell in if they are lacking that father role model,
Yes.
uh, so so that brings me to my question there. It seems that you have had a real good relationship with your dad,
Yeah.
and so how was your relationship with your dad, and also, have you also seen this in the boxing gyms, and you're a professional boxer and have trained professional fighters, so
Mhm.
forth, so I imagine you have many insights on this.
I I have seen it. I've seen it's as far as other kids growing up when I was boxing, and kids now, and so forth. Um, I've seen uh, I've seen fathers in boxing who are really good influences uh, on their sons. I've seen I've seen a lot of guys that just don't have father around at all. Like don't didn't know guys who didn't know his guys who didn't know their father, um, or guys who had a stepfather who's actually been good, or they've had stepfathers that's been abusive, the whole range of everything. Um, what I found is that actually some guys that don't have fathers or father figures, it might um, get a good father figure with a coach and go very far and everything. Um, I no don't want to get into too uh, too personal uh, about guys, and I don't necessarily know them all that much. Some of these guys, but I'm going to actually name a name a name. There's actually 2018 he became WBA middleweight champion of the world. He lost the title in a rematch with the guy that he defeated. But a guy named Rob Brandt from Minnesota. He uh, from the St. Paul area. My original boxing coach, Emmett Yanez of the Mexican American Boxing Club, he was finished. He lost his gym, and he was training guys at White Bear Lake, which is a suburban gym. He started out and had this Rob Brandt as his amateur uh, box. He was training him as an amateur. Um, to most of his amateur career, and he was world ranked. He was on the went to the world championships and everything, and was on the USA team. He didn't quite make. He didn't make the Olympics, but he came close to it. And uh, I remember talking to him before, and he didn't have. If I remember correctly, he didn't have that great of a relationship with his dad. But Emma was like a real serious mentor to him. Um, Poor Emmett died in 2016, but he was 3 months away from turning 97 at that time, so he lived a good long life. But a lot of other. I remember at his funeral, the priest saying, uh, I just met before the funeral here. I met a lot of guys here who who uh, who were who Emmett has really influenced greatly in their lives, and some of them have just told me that they wouldn't be alive now if it weren't for him. And like Bobby Zamora, the second. I mean, so let me read this for the first poem in this book, because
Yeah, please do.
that's uh I'm talking about four different men that, besides my father, who were influential on me. And by the way, they weren't actually they weren't actually the fathers to me. They helped me in the world of boxing, which is a really it's a manly thing, and you need that male leadership for you to help you succeed in that world. But it's called The Perfect Metaphor. I wrote it on August 24th of 2017. The perfect metaphor to describe boxing is jazz. There is a rhythm to every fight. I learned this from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White. A fighter has a rhythm, and the only way to beat him is for you to break it and establish your own. That's where improvisation begins. No one knows where it will lead or where it will end. Jazz is the perfect metaphor to describe boxing. Every fight has its rhythm, upon which is added improvisation. I learned that from Dennis Presley, who learned it from Rock White, who practiced collaboration with Emma Guinness and Bobby Zamora, the two men who taught me to fight. And actually, so I started at 10 years old with Emmett, and Bobby was a hero to me. I was 10, he was 26, and he won his third Upper Midwest Golden Gloves championship that year. I watched him at the Minneapolis Auditorium. When and I remember watching him in the semifinals, knocking a guy out. It was just amazing. It was, he's a bantamweight, 119 pounder, and he was going to turn professional, and then he didn't, and then he ended up helping Emmett as his assistant. And he took me down to the National Golden Gloves my senior year of high school in um, when I was 17 back in 1987, and I'm actually supposed to call him. I'm supposed to call Bobby. A little bit later today, because he's helping me with some stuff on my car. I'm still in touch with the guy. And anyway, Bobby he even said he was interviewed on TV about Emmett after he had died, and he has said to me many times. He said that Emmett in many ways the reason he's alive. And he was such a important man to him in his life. Um, Actually, Emmett, when his wife, I his wife had gotten really sick, and he had to take care of her till she died, and he had stopped training me. And at a certain point, I spent my last 2 years boxing with the first two guys that I mentioned in that poem, Rock White and Dennis Presley. Um, and uh, 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 um, um, I actually wrote in my website. I wrote a eulogy about Emmett when he died, and I talked about how he ended up getting married a second time after his wife had died. Um, his wife had told him before she had gotten uh, she's had these strokes. So before she was unable to communicate and she was still lucid, she was always telling him, "When I die, you're gonna have to get married because someone has to take care of you." And she actually said, "I know who you should marry. You should marry Sylvia." And Sylvia had been a, a bridesmaid in their wedding when he was 21 and she was like 17 or something. You know what I mean? And um he ended up a couple years later he ended up marrying her, and she's over 100 now, and in Texas, and Bobby has kept in touch with her, and and to take care of. I don't know how much longer she's going to be around, but that's just an example of relationships that could get built in these kinds of situations growing up. I mean, I think that as when it comes to fatherhood, in an intact married family, like my father, he told me in the later years before he died, he said, you know, people like when I got my driver's license right at 16. I mean, my dad had an extra car, and so he said, look, you know, people thought, you know, you make a kid wait a couple of years to, you know, make him be more responsible. He said, my kid had something that he was interested in that kept him focused and everything. So I figured let him get there more easily and everything, you know. And so, uh, and the other thing about boxing being a dangerous sport, and you know, and that kind of thing, my mother was kind of a lot more apprehensive about me being a boxer than my dad was. But my dad's idea was, look, you know, he's got something that he's interested in. He's going to have to face adversity as he grows up anyway. So let it toughen him up a little bit, let him take a little bit of risk, and he's a boy, you know. And so, I mean, they were letting me play football anyway. So why, you know, and I quit football to box. So, uh, I, I actually, I think actually boxing was a little bit safer anyway than football. But
Yeah, American football is
yeah.
really rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, not to underplay the dangerous with brain damage in boxing. It's like I noticed, you know, when I was younger, I can eat that leather no problem. It was like, you know, I had this. My dad was always saying like, yeah, you know, the cliche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, you know, I can eat some leather and no problem. But then when I didn't had any sparring for a couple of years and then came back, I noticed, oh, I'm really aware of how this is impacting my brain, you know.
Mhm.
But when I was younger, I didn't care, and I didn't thought it was that dangerous, even though you get a lot of beating every week, week out and week in. But
Yeah.
so, do you have? That's quite interesting for to know.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference today in the awareness of brain damage in the sport? Do you spar as much and as hard as you
Well,
used to
I,
with your
I don't
fighters, or?
I don't spar anymore. I was sparring. I there are times there were multiple years when I didn't spar at all, and then when I went back to it, I was like, okay, I'd occasionally spar with guys, and then um and I talk about it a little bit in the book, like sparring with some of these, you know, professionals, like uh, uh you know, like some who became world champions, and so forth, and you know, because all the time that I did spar I was like, you know, I got guys that, I mean, three guys I went to national Golden Gloves with, fought 11 world champions between them as professionals. I always was thinking to myself, yeah, I convinced myself I'm going to be a writer, and I haven't, you know, I haven't made a lot of money living and name for myself as a writer. I really wish I would have turned professional. So how is this gonna? I wasn't telling people, but I was. So whenever I was doing that training, I was always complaining. Eventually, I'm gonna have a couple of fights, you know, try to look good, and you know, so people could say, well, he could have gone somewhere, you know, and so when I was sparring with those guys, I was in really good shape, and I was sparring competitively with them. Um, but I think the fact that I had between 1996 and 2001, I didn't spar at all. But then I started sparring again between that next decade. I did spar a lot, so I, you know, I hopefully I'm hoping that I didn't take so many punches that dementia ever kicks in. I really hope it never does. I did have an MRI one time, or actually two MRIs, and there was nothing on my brain at all. Um, but that first guy I mentioned, that poem, Dennis Presley, he said we were training this guy who I actually talk about it in if you remember I talk about sparring with Leo the Lionhearted uh 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 Moreno, who um tore my abdominal muscle. I thought he broke my rib. He tore my abdominal muscle with a heart punch,
Yeah.
which is a punch that Emmy Yanez always taught us to throw. Um, uh, I was training this guy. I was helping Dennis train this guy Raul Gracia, um, for professional fights, and he told Raul, "What makes you punch drunk is not getting hit in the head." He said, "Having fights and getting hit in the head hard, that's not what makes you punch drunk." He says, "What makes you punch drunk is boxing every day, meaning sparring every day." So he said, you gotta make it every other day. You gotta take a day off and give your brain a rest. Now I think you might want to take 3 weeks off sometimes, but I mean, and you do. But I think that when you're actually training for a fight, you should alternate your sparring days to every other day. You shouldn't do it every day in a row. I really don't think that you should. Um, Although I don't think there's any way of making sure you're not going to get brain damage. Uh, just have to be as healthy as you can be, and hopefully, it's not going to happen. And
And
I,
yeah, and fight smart. Be
yeah,
safe with your fighting and be a good defense and so forth. But as you said, y- I have a I I can say that quite frank. It's a quite a big difference between original boxing and kickboxing or Thai boxing.
yeah, oh yeah,
Boxing is so much centered to the head,
yeah,
but in Thai boxing, you have the whole body to strike on, and it's there's a big difference when you come to a Thai boxing gym and a boxing gym. In a
yeah,
boxing gym, it's oftentimes very hard sparring. In Thai boxing gym, of course, it's also hard sparring, but not at the same level. It's more playful, and
yeah,
then when you are training uh, month or weeks before a fight, of course, you need some horse sparring as well to come into it. But it's more playful in that way. But boxing it's really hard sparring oftentimes, and but there is this dilemma that you need. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you need to be quite adjusted to the hard sparring so you don't get a shock in the ring.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
You gotta be able to take. I mean, the thing is, you can learn how to box and do everything perfectly, but if you can't take a punch, you can't box.
no,
I mean, and you can't. You're not gonna fight. I mean, you could show a guy, get him in the mirror, teach him how to throw the punches, get him on the heavy bag, have him hold the pads, and he could do everything perfectly. But I always tell people the way you're gonna know really if you can be a boxer and really really box and be successful and do it. You're not gonna know until you actually get in the ring to box someone sparring because you gotta know if you can take a punch. If you
exactly, and I always been like this. You can tell me if you have acknowledged this in some other boxers or so forth. Yeah, it would be quite obvious, but for me, it's like when I spar lightly, I lose interest. I don't fight as good as I can when I do a lighter sparring. I not 100%, but 80% sparring. Then I'm in the mood. Then I have fun. Then it's I can live out my so to say my talents or whatever. Uh,
yeah. Yeah, my when there's a big event coming up that I'm gonna compete in, then it's like, that's the only thing I can focus on. And there's a number of motivations. One is I want to win. Two is, it's going to be it's going to be someone who's going to be trying to hurt me. so I have to be ready for it. And 3 is, I might got to be doing my, thousands of sit-ups and abdominal exercises because I don't want to be humiliated if I get hit in the body and I go down in front of everyone. So it's like so every day up in the morning, exercising, running, everything, at the gym every day, all the hours. um, and then you think you'd be thinking about the guy that you got to spar today and how he was showing you up a little bit yesterday. You heard you a little bit of something. You want you know you're thinking all day long about how am I going to box this guy? How am I going to be able to dominate him? How am I going to keep him from dominating me? I mean, growing up, walking around in the in high school or walking down the street, um, in downtown or in the neighborhood or whatever, or in a walking around in a department store, a clothing store. What I used to do is everybody I'd walk by, every teenage boy or man that I would walk by, I would look at him and look at his height and look at his height and his weight, and I'd look at him and think, okay, now if when I'm walking up to him, we get in a fight, where do I hit him? Well, what's going to be the first thing he's going to be where he's most vulnerable? Hit him in the body with the right hand, where I hit him with the left hook, where I move my head, where I bob this way, weave that way, how many, and I would think about fights I'd seen on TV too, and about how would Sugar Ray Leonard do this? How would Alexis Arguello do this? But I would literally look at people that I didn't know and wonder how am I gonna beat that guy up? How do I knock him out? How do I, and so sometimes when I look back on it, I think I really should have tried a professional boxing career, because if I did that, if I kept that focus like that, um, um, and just never broke out of it, I I could have made myself into a pretty I could become a pretty uh good machine, But the thing is,
Yes.
I think that that's the kind of attitude you have to be a fighter. People don't understand that about boxing, and how different boxers are, the mentality that we have, and we're human beings, so we love people, and we want to have we want to have decent relationships with people and stuff like that. But the whole boxing thing is, you have to be that kind of uh you have to be that conditioned physically, you have to be that strong, and you have to be that focused in order to be successful fighting. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're one of the guys that just quits early and doesn't be involved with it. But that's one thing that I think helps me as a trainer. I'm not actively training any competitive boxers at the moment. I was working with a professional and just this last month, and or 2 months ago, um and we've kind of parted ways now. Um but uh that's one thing that when I've got the time to focus more on it, I want to train more competitive fighters and more professionals when I can, because I think that having that mentality enables me to be able to impart the skills onto others, and help guide them along um, in the challenge of what it is. And by the way, so to get back to the question of fatherhood, I just want to say had also asked me about my relationship with my dad. Um, as you can tell from the book, I was very close to him, and I love him very much, and I'm very grateful for uh, everything that he gave to me, and the value of his presence in my life. Um, I don't cover much of how in my 20s we did have a few years when we were really fighting with each other a lot, and we were um, not getting along too well at all. But I do mention how he said to me he wanted me to hang out with him more in my mid 30s. I'd actually like to share that passage if I could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please do that.
Okay, so this actually I talk about. Well, this also covers the experience of working at that Native American Indian homeless shelter, too, in a little instant there that um, relates to my experience with having a father and dealing with kids who don't have fathers in their lives. Constantly tired, always worried that I wasn't writing enough or wasn't at the gym enough, frustrated that I wasn't pulling in enough money on my freelance endeavors to quit my straight job. I was at that shelter every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 11 p.m., working till 8 a.m. the next morning. One night, at least a year into that overnight position, there was a little black boy, 5 years old and placed in shelter just that day, who slept on the couch because he was too scared to be on the boys' floor in the darkness of the old house. And while I was in the kitchen doing the dishes after midnight, I heard him crying hysterically through the sound of the water spraying on pots and pans. I remember there was nothing I could do, so I just kneeled on the floor next to the couch and gave him a hug and rocked back and forth, saying, "You're a good boy. You're a good boy." At the time, on Monday mornings, Dad would pick me up at my apartment after work and take me to breakfast. I'd been doing so many things, reaching the middle of my 30s and trying to establish myself to the level I thought I should have reached in my 20s, so I was very busy. Dad told me he wasn't spending enough time with me in my adult years and wanted me to commit to seeing him once a week. That was a time when Dad altered his approach to many issues in life, even eventually, at Mom's insistence, going to counseling at the VA and getting evaluated for post traumatic stress disorder. Even though he'd been married his entire adult life, had no chemical dependencies, and was never unemployed, which were considered the biggest indicators, at least on the surface level, he said, they diagnosed him with it. That's understandable because he saw a lot of fighting and death in Vietnam and almost died there before his 24th birthday. But I told him he was crazy. There was no way I could commit to seeing him once a week. I just didn't have the time. Why? He said. Because, Dad, I'm trying to do so many things. I just don't have the time. Fine, he said. I guess you can come spend time with me at my funeral. That hit me hard. I committed to his request, and we had breakfast together once a week for the last 15 years of his life. That's the best decision I ever made. Anyway, he picked me up Monday morning after the weekend I'd worked when I had to comfort that 5-year-old boy alone at the shelter. He said hi, and we sat for a moment as I told him about it, and I just couldn't help it. I started to cry a little. It was good to be with my dad. I always knew who he was and that he was always in my life and I was always his son. I never had any confusion about who I was or to whose family I belonged. And so um yeah, so that was kind of, at that point when he insisted that I see him once a week, um I was, I was between 34 and 36,
Yeah.
and uh he uh he said, I need you to commit to talking with me once a week. We got to get together for at least an hour. And so let's just have breakfast, And um, I think that if he wouldn't have done that, we would have been. It's not like we would have been disrespecting each other or anything. We just would have been much more distant and so forth, And it's just like, I mean, just the kind of guy he was. He just wanted to make sure that we had that connection And it's good to be able to talk to your father as an adult. And then for
Yeah.
fathers, I think fathers are really very parents are much more satisfied later in life when they can actually have adult conversations with their children. They're still their children, but they can have more adult relationships with them. It's just the way you know that you've really raised that child, and you can have more security about how the next generation is going to be when you die, and carry on and everything.
You see the fruits of what you have, all the time and effort you have put in into your
Yeah,
child. So, and actually, that part of your book, as you just now
yeah,
told us about, is that inspired me actually very much, because recent my dad he he had his 70 uh, he had his seven seven not 17 help me out.
70th.
So yeah, sorry. 70th birthday, and so my father had his 70th birthday now for a couple of weeks ago,
Mm.
and we don't meet up so much, and so me and my brother we went there, and my brother hadn't met him for like 3 years, I think, and not talked to him
Oh, wow.
for like 3 years or something like that. But yeah, but anyway, that inspired me, and but it will be the reverse. I will try to
Yeah, spend more
maybe,
time with them.
yeah, exactly, and see where if he will jump on that and be pleased to spend some time. It's the last days, and you never know when people go away, and yeah, you have to yeah, um,
Well,
cherish that time you have left.
hopefully, we hope he's going to make it at least 30 more years, because we want everyone to make it to 100. But it can it could be 3 more years. You never know.
Exactly,
How much
exactly,
it
and
lasts.
that's it's like that for all of us. You can be 5 years old, and you can be run over of a car or something like that. So yeah, God forbid, but
Yeah,
and so yeah, I really like that part. It's a simple thing like that, just have a breakfast, and isn't that just the most is that thing we humans do that connect us the most with each other, is when we have a meal together. So
it is.
yeah, and it's not a coincidence at all that the Eucharist is it's a meal of some sort.
For sure. I know it was the
Yeah,
Last Supper. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So it really is on a spiritual level, on a psychological level. We bind with each other, and it's all over human culture. It's this meal we have together. We share a meal together. We break bread.
Right.
It's so important, and not just with family members, but with brothers, sisters, friends, family. And even you had in the old days. It's very common that if you have two competing kingdoms, they have a meal together to yeah, the kings, they talk to each other, and they come to different conclusion and so forth, and feel each other out. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's
Hopefully it prevents the war, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
and I want to go into a little bit about your experience with
Okay.
indigenous, yeah, tribes
Right.
you were with there, and you also mentioned there that, yeah, when you wrote the book, you wanted to you don't want to I don't remember exactly what you said, but you don't want to not scare away people, but you it's gonna be when they read a book, they uh, you want them to feel welcome, right? No matter where you're from, what culture you're from, and so
Let that
forth.
respected. Respect.
Respect, exactly. That's the word. Yeah, feel respected and then not trampled on. And it's it because there is this from a Christian worldview. Uh, and people outside of Christianity, they often feel like it's um, it's and it really is, of course, God judge every human, of course, but
Mhm.
people outside Christianity on the on the surface level often feel that Christianity is excluding
Right.
every other world view. But this is, yeah, I don't know if you have this doctrine in Catholicism, but in the Orthodox, you have one doctrine of the logos spermaticos, and it is Jesus have been logos have been underlying in every truth, in every culture in the world,
Right.
all through the ages, and you can feel, you can see these seeds of truth in every um, religion and so forth. And it's very interesting that when we look at pagan religions, um, it's oftentimes people think that that's the starting point, the paganism. But actually, when you go way back, it was the a one God, but I will say the triune God, of course.
Right.
But there is one. I don't know exactly what tribe, the name of the tribe, but I know one indigenous tribe in the U.S. is. They all refer. I think you wrote about it in your book as well. That they refer to this one. I don't know if they say father or, but I don't think so. But the one overwhelming power, the one God.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
read somewhere that uh, the in this specific tribe, then not the tribe. I don't know if it is the same tribe that you were.
it was writing about right.
Yeah, but it's I can't remember
Yeah.
when I read it and who it was that wrote it, but um, he had the contact with indigenous tribes and so forth, and he said that they have lost the connection with the one God, something in those lines.
Mhm. Okay.
Is
Well, I think what I mentioned the word and honest to God truth, there's there are different there are different spellings you'll find, and I looked up, and I don't know if I got the right spelling on there or not, but the Lakota, or so the Oglala Sioux Lakota. This great Sioux nation was mainly called Dakotas. There's Lakotas, the Dakotas, but the Lakotas, um, in the Lakota language, they refer to God as Tankashla Wakantanka, and that means grandfather. The best interpretation I know of is means grandfather, great mystery, right? And so there's a fatherly understanding of God, but there's also the reference to the Great Spirit, which just the of God being um found. You can find the presence of God in everything in all of creation, and so that whole I always thought of when the generic the Great Spirit would be mentioned, and that's what in the Ojibwe language Gitche Manitou means, Great Spirit. It's GITANMANITOU, I think it is. Get your Manitou, but or maybe just you. I can't remember, but um. I always thought of that as, well, if they're talking about the Great Spirit, then this I'm identifying it as the same thing as the Holy Spirit. Now, I mean, and I think that you can find similarities in different religious traditions with Christianity. That is an identification of what would be one God. And I make a mention in here. I was looking for it. I can't find it right now, but I make a mention of Bishop Robert Barron, who at the time I refer to him, because at the time that I wrote this book, he was still in Los Angeles. So I referred to him as, I'm not going to change it because it's published later. I was just when I wrote it. The auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles, Robert Barron, but he's now in Minnesota, my home state. He's bishop of Rochester, Winona. But he said, it was in, I believe it was in the series that he did of a documentary series called I think it's called Catholicism, where he's explaining the history and the meaning of the faith. He says, as Catholics, our approach is we look at other traditions and we see the truth and recognize and respect the truth we find in those traditions, and then point to what we see in our understanding and say, here's the totality of the truth. So, and we do find that we do believe the totality of the truth is in the Trinity.
Yeah.
And that the Trinity is the one God. And really that's what, like, I mean, in the one poem I've got in here, uh uh Life So Simple. Could I read it actually?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
In the poem Life So Simple, uh I actually describe God as love, family, and life. Um, Written Sunday, March 31, 2019. Life So Simple. As if to pray, you start today in meditation on your bicycle wheel, the separate spokes united in the center. You want me to be blunt, you say. I want to be direct, but fear I'll frighten you away. The final action is the original intention. This statement is authentically true, not just my invention. My responsibility is to you a comfort for my rest, a respect in my behavior, helping you to be your best. You can push me away, invite me to stay, or walk with me today, but we met for a reason, to teach each other and learn. Such a fact comes not from acts, but is a grace we did not earn. Demons distract, demons lie, and demons discourage us from our destiny till we die. Friends encourage, friends assist, and friends persist with love on which we rely. Your guardian angel already talked to mine. Together they've watched us share laughter and argue to the point of crying. You know they're sent by God, who really does exist and is not a tyrant or a terrorist. Rather, he is love, family, life, held in common at the core. You and I, specific spokes, united in the center, spinning round from place to place, and nothing more. But yeah, I say that's what God, God is love, family, life. Which, those terms, that's three. That actually happens to be a trinity of terms: love, family, life. But the thing is, you think of the Trinity as a family. I mean, always existing. The Son proceeding from the Father, proceeding from the Father. The Holy Spirit being the love between them, right? And then, uh, the perception of humanity being that, our understanding of humanity being that um, God's salvation of us is by sending the Son through the Virgin Mary, connecting to uh, connecting us forever to Him in a familial way, uh, and having it in, his entire vision is our of humanity is womanhood, because the final act, the statement, it's actually that verse where I say the final action is the original intention. This statement is authentic truth, not just my invention. I actually get that from this book, The First Society, about talking about marriage culture, by Professor Scott Hahn, who I don't know if you know who that is, but
No,
he's pretty famous here. He's the most famous Catholic convert. He's like the most powerful Catholic apologist for, who's converted. He was a Presbyterian minister, like big guy, and he converted to Catholicism, and he teaches uh, at Franciscan University in Steubenville, Ohio. He's teaches theology there, and he says that in his book, he says when God, the 7 days of creating the world, or well, you rest on 7 days, 6 days to create, but the last creation is Eve. The last creation is woman. So the final the final action is the original intention, and so that was what his vision of I mean, womanhood is central to the vision of what humanity, God's vision of what humanity is to be. And can you think of a greater uh, definitive understanding of the dignity of the human person and the dignity of womanhood, that it's actually through her womb, that God actually unites with humanity, and that's something which should um cause us to respect women that much more and want to be more devoted to one woman, and to have monogamy and not to be a womanizer and so forth. I mean, that it's just such an elevation of uh of the value of women, and actually the value of sex. And I actually make that, I do make a statement about that towards the end. I talk about um what I learned among the Native American peoples, the American Indian peoples, um, in the similarity in that they don't necessarily all live up to, and we don't necessarily live up to, but the similarity in at the root of beliefs to Christian beliefs in the sanctity of sex, and the sanctity of the human body, um, which is 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 pretty true, and uh, yeah. So you're asking about the. I'm talking quite a bit about Christianity here, but
yeah, but no, it's great. It's great, Mark. But it's very true. It's very true that it tells us something about the respect we should have for our the way we reproduce, so to say. And
right.
uh, and of course, it's I think it's or I'm quite certain, this picture of that Christianity is. Uh, of course, it's the man is the head of the household. That is how it is, but
Mhm.
that doesn't minimize the woman at all, because there's a relationship. She lifts the man up, and without the woman, you don't have as a good head of the household, and everything has to be placed in the right way, on the right place in the hierarchy. And the women have their um, women have their they bring love, they bring the family together, and and the man, we protect, we provide, and we stand for the more logical part of the household, so to say, and the woman is more intuitive, more sensible, and you can't have
Yeah.
the one without the other. So it's but it's because it's have become so demon demonetized, demonetized,
Demonized.
sorry, yeah, demonized in our society today,
Well,
and all the
yeah.
agenda, so.
The thing is, I there's a lot of hostility just kind of in the atmosphere now, it just worldwide, and so you're in Sweden, I'm in the United States, so we're talking about we are in the Western world.
Yeah.
The thing is, Christianity is always under attack. I mean, there've been in the 20th century into the 21st century, more Christians have been martyred for their Christianity than in the previous 19th centuries combined, right?
Yeah.
It's happening. I mean, there was just a massacre this last month in Nigeria. There are always massacres in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I mean, China's, regularly bulldozing churches and so forth. And I mean, all this stuff is always happening. But the thing is, what we've been. I mean, I think about the United States of America. I really love our Constitution. I really love our first. I love the way our country is. It is structured in our three branches of government. And I also love this. So it is part of Western civilization. It's Judeo-Christian based, and we had a violent clash with the indigenous peoples here, and we should have, as Christians, as Christian-based colonizers. Now we're talking about different European factions. I mean, because there were, but the way this country developed, it's mostly kind of Anglo influenced, because of the English, mostly Protestant, but there was a lot of Catholic influence, and so we our relationship with Christianity and the indigenous people, traditional indigenous people who practice the traditional ways, which was resurrected quite a bit in the 70s, 60s, 70s, on now, right?
With like the counterculture and
yeah, and with like the group that I was out protecting buildings with, when the after the police station was burnt down, because American Indian Community Center across the street was also burnt down. And I was actually there at the opening of one of the guards there when they reopened that place and everything. I was doing security with American Indian Movement when Clyde Belcourt, the president, had died right after that. He had just transferred presidency to a guy named Frank Parrow, and God rest his soul, because he died last year in August. I can't believe it's already been a year. This tradition is being brought back, and we have a tenuous relationship. It should be better than it was. If during the process of the settlement of the what became the United States, if we were more respectful, it could have been less of a clash. It was probably going to be a clash anyway. It was probably going to be violent anyway. um, I've been wanting to say this. I've been wanting to write this in an article for a long time, and so this will be the first time I'm saying this publicly. And I've been wanting to say this to some of the Native American Indian friends of mine, and I haven't been able to lately. And I've been saying I've it's been some of my friends have been realizing how uh, politically conservative I really really am, and things. It's harder to talk now. I wish it were easier, and I want it to be easier. But I really believe that uh, the indigenous nations of North and South America are really lucky that it was Christians that colonized this part of the world, because you got to remember that was just after I guess it was just after the Crusades, and the Crusades were not. I mean, the Crusades were a defensive action because there was 400 years of. I mean, from the emergence of Islam, Islam was conquering everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think thank God it was Christians who landed here, because I really believe if Muslims landed here, that you wouldn't be talking to me right now. I don't believe I'd be
No.
here.
No. No.
I don't believe that the people I talk about in the book, the people that I went to the Sundance with and everything, very likely their ancestors would have been killed. I really believe that. Now I don't
Yeah.
know if it. I don't know what would have happened. You can't really say this would have happened for sure, because history is just history is the way that it is, and what happened happened. And um, in the last the last 50 years, 100 years or so, as time's been going by in the 20th century, there's been just this absolute hostility towards Christianity. A lot of it has been most of it's been Marxist based,
Yeah.
and the truth is that it's been an attack on the family.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and, and I can't tell you how many times in the Twin Cities, I'm hanging around like the West Bank area of the West Bank neighborhood of University of Minnesota, just in Dinkytown, which is the East Bank, or just among Catholic campuses sometimes, just here, a young, you know, in my younger years now, but in my hearing an undergraduate or graduate, young lady saying, I don't want to get married because I don't want to be a man's property and all this kind of stuff. I mean, just that whole kind of attitude is it's just so contrary to family, and
Yeah.
and so that's why we have such a low birth rate now.
Exactly. And there is a lot of other things as well that make us not produce so much children, but yeah, I agree with you. I think that's totally correct. That if it would if it would be Islam that would conquer the continent that you're on right now, it would be Islamic, and the indigenous people wouldn't be that well off. And um, it's also it is like this. At some point it would happen anyway. Because there is also there is this it's scarce on resources, and there will at some time come um yeah, more powerful entity that will would like to take these resources from the land. And so and when you look at Christianity has principle of um, principle of not doing more harm than necessary. So
Right.
that no, that's a big difference between many other um, uh, moral systems or religions and so forth. But you don't hear that so much because people don't realize that many of the laws we have in the Western world they are based on the Bible and Christianity and the tradition and so forth. There's no question about it. And so actually I'm quite interested in. I have been in periods that I have gone quite deep in different religions and comparative religions and so forth. And in particular, I've read a lot about the colonization of India and also a comparative religion between Hinduism and specifically actually Orthodox Christianity then and
So,
it's very um, it's also this like the dialectics become like this Hinduism in this case then Hinduism versus Christianity, how you look at it. But Hinduism, for example, is not a religion in that way. It's many different religions of
right.
that type of that land of India, so it's very different. And yeah, and that the war on Christianity is it's not surprising, and the Lord says that we will be persecuted, so it's not a surprise, And have seen recently as well, in the UK have become very anti-Christian, and
Yeah.
every day you can see preachers and so forth. I personally is not that fond of street preaching and so forth. It's not a traditional thing, but it's horrendous in a so-called Christian. Yeah, it's a secular nation, no, to be frank. But it's in a Christian nation that you will be persecuted just to pray in
Preach.
your mind as
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
outside a abortion clinic.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
There was a lady that was in London, right? And she was standing there, and the the cop said, "Are you praying?" And she
Yeah.
said, "Yeah." She said, "Yes." He said, "Then I'm going to arrest you." They're like, "I'm not. You're not speaking." So, "Are you praying?" And she said, "Yes." So, arrest her. That just it just boggles my mind that they would be. I mean, they would be that. I mean, Britain has never had freedom of speech anyway, but the fact that they would be that blatant about it at this point is just shows how far gone they are right now.
Yeah.
When you said doing the studying earlier of talking about India and other places, I just want to just clarify. Did you say the colonization or decolonization?
No, the colonization.
E as in the THE.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, um, so it's a misconception oftentimes that people do is that, for instance, that Hinduism is one unified religion, but that's not it at
Right.
all. Actually, it's many different brand of religions that was in that land when the colonizers came. And Hinduism is a term driven by, I think, the name of some some Sanskrit word that is connected to the language, but Hinduism was a word um, created, or a way for the colonizers to categorize.
The English did it, right?
Yeah, the English. Yeah, exactly. So, and so, yeah, it's very interesting. You can also see today, like Christianity have a real impact on India. Just to say, just one of the more popular branches of the practice of so-called Hinduism then is called Bhakti, and it's I think it's impact from Christianity. Bhakti is love that wasn't prevalent at all in Hinduism before the contact with Christianity, and they have a very early contact with Christianity. You have the Apostle Thomas that went
Yeah.
there Yeah. So
You
he impacted very much. You have actually they are Oriental Orthodox, I think. The
okay.
Thomas Christians they call.
Right, Topia.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
very much so. So I yes, I was I I was, caught up in not caught up. I was involved in the whole the whole uh kind of, uh revolutionary attitude of, of decolonization and, supporting of former, of colonized traditionally colonized areas in third world, liberation movements and so forth. Um, my in my early 20s, I got involved with a group that organized and did demonstrations um, in favor of Irish independence, reunification, independence, and that is there was always an alliance or a solidarity uh, with in, with American Indians and the American Indian movement. And so that kind of was that was an influence in my being involved with the American Indian community. And what I don't know if I got it because I've got bookmarks in there, but I don't know if I got them marked at that spot.
hello there. Just a quick interruption from the conversation here. I will just inform you that if you would like any coaching session with me, you can easily do that by just send me a mail and you will receive a free consultation. And if you put the episode name in the mail, you will get additional free hour of coaching. I also offer personal training and diet plans. Just hit me on the mail or send me a PM on Instagram or YouTube. Thank you very much. And now back to the conversation.
The point I was making here, so it's okay. I got this part in here where I talk about. Well, it's the part where I'm talking about the values of sex and so forth. I say at one point that I found the same similar thing where the hippies came to the Dakota reservation of Prairie Island outside of it's about half hour outside of St. Paul, and because this guy Amos Owen, who was the father of Arden and Ray, who were the spiritual leaders out there when I went out there, had opened up the sweat lodge to people outside of the Native American community. And when the hippies came there, they were bringing their kind of progressive mentality with them and their kind of ideas, and they had to be explained. It had to be explained to them that that they're very modest and they and in covering the body and stuff like that, and not like they didn't have the libertine views towards sexuality that the hippies did, come in. And I find the same. So the Irish Republican movement that wants to get England out of Ireland, it was they quite a bit abandoned their Catholic and also abandoned their Protestant roots. I mean, because there have been historically Protestants who have wanted to unite Ireland in a 32 county nation without the British presence. Also, I mean, because the modern day IRA campaign traces itself back to 1798, which is called the United Irishmen Rebellion, which is was led by Theobald Wolfstone, who was a Presbyterian, and their slogan was Protestant, Catholic, and Dissenter. But the whole the and I'm just going to straight up say it. It's the socialism and the communism, um which was always somewhat present in at least in the 20th century with the Irish independence movement. But that that element of it, which is also atheistic, it it's contrary to the Catholic. It's contrary to the Christian, the larger Christian values that you would find among the people, and it's contrary to the solidity of families, and you really need that for any nation. And so I found the same thing, that same kind of attitude among the people that I mentioned some of that experience in this book, because there was kind of a cultural revival among Irish Americans going on in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And if it weren't for the troubles that were going on then in Ireland, some of that revival probably wouldn't have been happening, you know. So anyway, I just think that that's a pretty interesting thing uh, to uh, to mention, because we're talking about that clash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it is it's prevalent in all the Western world, and the war on Christianity and traditional values and so forth has have since the 60s easy. And actually, when you look into how how um, how um, yeah, how construction culture and so forth, that is governed, that is it is created, all this subculture that is degenerate, and also brings you also to the religious part. Actually, many of this uh, cultural culture creation from different lobbyists and politicians and interest groups and so forth. It is it's very much if you get into the literature, you can see it's very obvious that it's with strong intention that they bring in the religious aspect and try to degenerate it, like you have one in the 1800s that many of the New Age ideas come from is Blavatsky, or if you know who she was.
I was I'm not, I don't know if I'm familiar with that. Say her name.
Blavatsky.
Mm.
Uh,
I may have heard
but
of her. But you have to really
yeah,
refresh me there.
yeah. So she was the founder of Theosophy, and
Yes,
that
yeah, I've heard of the Theosophy. I think I may have heard of her. I see. I'm not that familiar with the name itself, but it sounds like someone I might have heard. What's the guy? The new Discourses podcast. What's his name? James Lindsay. Talk about, talk.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. The
'Cause I've listened to a lot of his breakdown of all the Marxist writings and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
Well,
So Blavatsky was one of the people that tried to bring in Eastern religions into Western society, like yoga and everything like that,
mhm.
And then also Aleister Crowley,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this he based many of his things on Blavatsky. So
Okay.
people think, okay, that just you know bogus and magical thinking and so forth. But no, if you look into the literature, you can clearly see that they have a strong connection with the CIA and so forth. So
Oh
it's
yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's
Well, so I mentioned. Do you remember the part where I mentioned Nick Bryant in my?
yeah. I wanted to ask you about the Epstein case.
Okay, I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know very much about Epstein, right? But I don't. But um, you'd have to actually. People should actually like look up Nick Bryant's website.
Yeah.
And they could follow a lot of stuff that that he covers. Because I haven't written about or covered any of that stuff, but he wrote. No, Nick wrote this book called The Franklin Scandal, which dealt with trafficking. Unfortunately, the source that this trafficker guy was from Boys Town, because this guy had gotten he ran the he was running the Franklin Savings and Loan. That's why it's called the Franklin Scandal. And he'd get these kids to be interns. There's some girls, mostly boys, that he'd get to be interns at the savings and loan, and then as rewards for good work, he'd take them on these trips to Washington D.C. And he had a connection there who would rent out a mansion. They'd have these parties, and at a certain point, you know, at a certain point, like after 9 o'clock or something, um, someone would pull out a joint or start bring some cocaine out or something like that. So any of the politicians or dignitaries who were there who didn't want to be a part of that would leave. So anyone who didn't have a problem that would be there. So right away they're starting to be compromised. Then they'd bring in kids, and they'd get them filmed, and they'd leverage them for what legislation they wanted and stuff like that. And it was a CIA backed thing, And he pretty well proved that the CIA was involved with this kind of stuff. And so I mean, the CIA, uh, this is kind of my pull between boxing and writing. Is sometimes I want to get involved with researching this kind of stuff and writing this kind of stuff, and it's like there's not upfront money to do it. And then if I'm involved with boxing, there's not necessarily upfront money for that either, but like, which one am I dedicating my time to? So I haven't really followed this stuff and become an expert on this stuff at all. But my friend Nick Bryant has done this stuff forever, and he's a guy that I would definitely tell people to check out, because you can get a lot of uh, there's a lot of stuff he's uncovered. He's a really excellent journalist. He's been living in New York, um, without a job, just as he's just been a freelance writer since 1995 or 1996. And the last thing he appeared on was a couple of weeks ago. He was on Roseanne Barr's podcast. He was on Sean Ryan's podcast a couple of times before that. But anyway, what else did you want to ask me about that? Since I mentioned, I just mentioned that because you're talking about the CIA being involved,
Yeah, exactly.
with
That
Crowley and stuff like that.
yeah.
And I guess so. We're getting on a tangent and going down a rabbit hole. But the main thing that we're talking about here is we're talking about the attack on Christianity and the attack on the family. And there are so many people. I mean, I never considered myself progressive. The Twin Cities got pride itself on being kind of a progressive community. I believe there's a real totalitarian uh, 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 tendency to to the progressive sensibility, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's exactly how James Lindsay described it on one of his podcasts. But um, there's so many people that I've been involved with over the years, because I was, I was doing left wing political activism before. I used, like I uh, in my mid 20s, early 30s, and there are people I know who were involved with that kind of stuff. I was involved with the foundation of something called the Twin Cities Independent Media Center, which was after the World Trade Organization riots in Seattle in 2000. Do you remember that happening, or no? Because I don't know how much of American news you follow, but the World Trade Organization met in 2000 in Seattle, and then there were riots, and everything, and it was a big thing. And the Independent Media Center had kind of started there, and by 2001, um, we had started one in the Twin Cities. And people, there was an anti-globalism kind of attitude there. And You know, now that Donald Trump comes along and gets elected president, and all these people who were very anti-globalist at that time are are just um because they want.
Reversed.
Well, yeah, they are.
Reversed. Yeah.
They're actually embracing, and I'm trying. I'm just. It's just kind of frustrating to see it because, like, yeah, that's the guy you got that's gotten elected. You can argue one way or another whether he's going to be more propping up the globalism or tearing it down, but he appears to be tearing it down. And I'm thinking, if scrutinize his administration 100% up and down. Anything wrong you find, correct it. Anything illegal, make sure it's punished. If he's guilty for, like, as a perpetrator on Epstein Island, put him in prison. I don't believe that he necessarily is. I don't, I mean, I don't believe he's necessarily covering anything up. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I'm not reporting on that. I don't know. Um, um, Nick Bryan is more skeptical of him than I am. Um, but don't just attack things without just don't just find anything to attack people over. We got to have reasonable conversations about things, and we've got, and I do believe that the devolution of power, what's to say, I believe in so this the Catholic thing, the principle of subsidiarity, which really it's the decentralization of power. Local
Yeah.
local issues are best solved locally. People, should be able to use the resources around them as
Exactly.
best
Yeah.
they can for their families. You can have your business and generate your own kind of income and support yourself with your family. Have your family working on that with you. A family business, strong families. That's a G.K. Chesterton talks about that. Um, or in his writing. But uh, this movement towards, like, centralized bank, uh, uh, digital currencies,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
in,
And
in
it's very you know it's hell on earth when everything is upside down, and
yeah,
I think it's a sign in the time. You can see everything get upside down, and like this it's become reverse, as you said, with the ones that was trying to get rid of the globalization is now harassing the one that tried to get rid of globalization.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's got to be, and
So
like that, honestly, what I'm trying to get at with this short little book I've got is I'm trying to what I'm trying to express is there's got to be the point with, in fact, I mean, it's a love poem that I write, but halfway around. But I'm saying to this girl, I foresee us meeting at the point of merger of difference and unity. And later on, I talk about I, at some point I'm going to find that spot and read to you the the thing about the sexual values and all that kind of thing, because
yeah.
I make the point. Yeah, yeah, well, right here. Okay. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So here it is right here. Uh, where this guy saw, um, I was, yeah, so I was at the same time. So let me just start so it's the start of chapter 7. In following the story and reading my poetry, depending, well, because this is the last chapter, so it's getting towards the end. I won't read too much in because I don't want to spoil the ending. In following the story and reading my poetry, depending on who you are, you've probably found some observations, hopefully many observations, with which you agree. You've probably also found some with which you disagree. You may find my love for Dad and my relationship with him good and admirable. You may be ambivalent to them, or you may even be repelled by them. The whole book, from the first to the last word, is about time. It's about the limitations of time and the gift of time, and about gratefully and prudently using time. It's about honoring time and honoring people within time, and it's about doing what should have been done a long time ago. So you can call the book It's About Time. Some realities mentioned earlier in this book have not been fully revealed, and I want to explain some key points so I'm not misunderstood as a man in order that people can make up their own minds about what I say. Obviously, much of this poetry is written to women with whom I've been either romantically involved or to whom I've just been attracted. In 2019, I was invited to share poems at the annual St. Patrick's Day party a family has thrown at St. Mark's Parish for more than 50 years. It was the first time I had ever been there, and I recited the first three, The Perfect Metaphor, Ever Since, and Two Pilgrim Souls, Anam Cara. An old man around Dad's age approached me afterwards and encouraged me to keep writing. He also asked me about my faith and about my desire to find a woman to marry. He admired the poems for their quality and linguistic clarity, but he had one caution. They could be dangerous, he said. I know that, I told him. They could be used for seduction. I don't do that. It's true. I don't. The women I've mentioned, the women to whom I've written the romantic poems, are all younger than I am, and a couple of them are significantly younger. If a man desires to father children, there must be a limit to the age of women he courts, and as each year goes by, that age limit gets one more year younger than his own age until, God forbid, it gets too late. It's just a reality of life. One of the sickest incongruencies of modern life is that people generally are more comfortable publicly sharing information about their sex lives than about their financial lives. They're either afraid people will think less of them for making too little money, or they'll try to exploit them or cause them trouble if they make too much money. But they feel fine letting people know they're sexually involved. They're ashamed to admit to striving for moral chastity, though. I told you at the beginning of the book that I'm Catholic, and I said that in 2007 I fully returned to the faith, began praying the rosary daily, and decided to avoid casual relationships. I started following the rules, all of them. You can make any presumption about a poem based on its text and should be able to imagine different people involved in situations described within them. So if the text of the poem portrays a greater or lesser degree of intimacy within its story, so long as you can critically prove it with quotes from that text, feel free to let your mind wander there. That's part of the achievement of universality in a well written poem. Know with certainty, though, if you try to assign any autobiographical realities between me and the women about whom I wrote these poems, that it never happened with any of them, especially since 2007. That has been my choice because I am a godfather to my niece and a confirmation sponsor to her and her brother, and that is the standard up to which I must live. If I fall, I must get back up. That's a standard required of any honest Catholic, as it is the standard of any honest Sundancer. It may seem strange to compare the honest Catholic to the honest Sundancer. Remember the line, though, in my poem, Halfway Around, referring to mutually multiple pleasures of a mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional nature, peaking at the point of merger of difference and unity. In 1993, I listened to a lecture at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center by Shahaku Akamura, a Japanese Soto Zen monk, called Living in Vow at the Point of Merger of Difference and Unity. I wasn't becoming a Buddhist. I was just trying to calm my mind and learn better concentration for boxing. However, I've carried that concept with me. We have differences, but a point of truth brings us together, where we unite while keeping our own identity. The mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional elements are the four portions that comprise each human being. The medicine wheel, which represents in color red, white, yellow, and black all the people of the world, also represents each of these four elements. The circle is always turning, in one element or another may be the central experience of the moment, but they are all there all the time. One point of merger of difference and unity is the respect for family and the value of sex. Those who believe sex is meant for arbitrary enjoyment in the absence of commitment, who believe in polygamy, approve of, produce, distribute pornography, and or broker prostitution, do not value sex. No, those who value sex are those who confine it to the commitment of husband and wife who, making love, form family. If you think that's prudish, you're crazy. If God ever grants me a wife, I'm perfectly comfortable going through every page of the Kama Sutra and exploring Taoist tantric techniques with her, as long as we're uh, natural and open to life. Those who value sex never put a price on it because it cannot be bought or sold. Because, in fact, sex is not a commodity. Humans are not a commodity. We are priceless, and sex is a gift to be shared only in love that is never lustful, because it is never selfish and is always selfless. Sex is sacred. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So,
really good. There's a lot of seeds of truth there, and it's one of those passages that really can make uh, hopefully a younger generation reflect on. You know, because uh, yeah, of course, marriage and sex and so forth is very very sacred, as you write in your book, and but it is it is how our modern society work today is like you only grab things for yourself to
right.
enjoy, and yeah, it's about enjoying things, but it's if you take the parallel with sex and food, for instance, you
Yeah.
can see it become destructive when you use it only for pleasure, but there is no nurture of the soul. Same is with food today. It's only in quantities, and it's in big quantities, and uh, you make the food really really sweet and fatty and sensational, but there is no nutrition. So there's a big parallel between. You can see it's quite clear when you put it beside each other how we how we manage sex and how we manage food today in our society, and if we live by this principle that we're not it's not for me to enjoy in a way without responsibility.
Right.
It's the other way around. Then it's like when you're outside, it's the weather is not always good, but you can, if it's rainy, you can manage the problem with nurturing yourself in this way. You make yourself a shelter, and then when you do that, maybe you wait a second and then the sun will come up. Same is with the pleasure. It's not the thing that we should strive for. It's not the pleasure. It's the nutrition and the well-being of others, and of course for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not well adjusted to life and other people, then you can't bring benefits to other people either. So it's very interesting. It's always comes to this. Society pushes this. You only pleasure, money, and so forth. and
Right.
uh, and yeah.
Well,
we,
the thing is, so I mean, I guess, so we were talking about the globalism thing, but there are also, I think what, um, there's an earlier part where I talk about, the hippies coming out to Prairie Island and stuff like that, and Art Owen kind of having to settle them down because look, you got to respect the body, but um, the thing is that we're talking the whole uh the whole thing is that, politically speaking, the idea of, indigenous people having sovereignty over, you know their land, or, like, getting a freeing people that have been colonized, and all those kind of causes. um I don't support any revolution. I don't support any um um realignment of anyone's nation that isn't based on nurturing the family. And, and then that's it's just the thing. Any any situation that subordinates the family to the government, that makes the government control everything, even the government controlling education over the family, without family input, without the family authority,
Yeah.
and without mother and father together with children, is something that weakens all of us. So I can't support it. So that means I'm not going to support uh, corporate dominance of anything either.
No.
I'm not going to support absolute capitalism. It's just like you know that's what G.K. Chesterton, and his was uh uh I'm trying to think, is Belloc is the I'm trying to remember the guy that influenced him. What he wrote about in what he wrote about in economically speaking, as a Catholic. He was saying, you know, and he was very actually influential, if I remember correctly, or maybe it's the other way around, on Leo the 13th's Rerum Novarum, which is the social Catholic social teaching on labor and family and everything, and actually condemns, because it came out in the 1800s. So I think a year or two before the Communist Manifesto, it condemned communism, and he's saying, on the one hand, you have the government being the first loyalty of mother and father, so children aren't taken care of, and then the children are left to the government, or else the corporation becomes the first loyalty to both of them. And when you need to focus on, so anyway, that's what I'm getting at. I don't, uh, that's why I'm not a progressive, basically. I
I
consider,
hear
I,
what
I
you
consider
know.
progressivism to be regressive.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying. To be controversial today isn't hard. It's just to be a sane person.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, because it is, as we talked about. It has been reversed. So today, to be controversial today is to be sane and have traditional values. That's the most,
yes,
yeah, that's counterculture today. So we've been speaking for 2 hours here. So
yeah.
if you, yeah, I
That's
think, yeah, I would love to do this again. Actually, I have a question. I would like to know how, for instance, uh, how your were preparing for your boxing matches, and
yeah.
how you prepare your fighters that you train and so forth. That would be really interesting. And
Well, let's set
yeah,
up a time in the next, week or two or something, and just talk some more. I would really love it. I wanted to tell you also, and so maybe in the next conversation we can, hopefully we can open up with this, that in 1991,
yeah,
um that was, so I was finishing up college at the University of Minnesota, and I met this Swedish guy who was studying there, who his parents were professors at the university, and he was, I believe, from Stockholm. His name was Bjorn Knutson, and
okay,
his southpaw. And then I sparred with him. We kind of wore that with each other a little bit, sparring, because he came down to the boxing gym, and he had one fight and won. That was kind of cool. And then I spent 6 months in Ireland in 1998. And I wrote about that a little bit, um, and I had worked for a while at a homeless shelter, because I had the experience of working in the homeless shelter here. And it was a volunteer stipend thing, and there were uh, a few people from other countries that were living in the same house with me, including a couple of girls from Sweden. So I got that little. I've had that little connection experience and stuff like that. Or just you made me talking. You made me think about that. So,
Yeah.
but I think you,
Interesting.
I think you'd like to hear about the boxer and everything. He was
Yeah.
pretty
So
cool too. Yeah,
it's often like this when you talk to someone that have many similarities.
yeah.
You can connect things, and there is just infinite topics and rabbit holes to go into, and share thoughts and reflections. It's yeah. So I think we could have another conversation as well, and have many things to talk about then. So I will I will I will send you a couple of dates, and you can see if you can manage some of them. One or yeah, anytime. That
It sounds great. I'm really glad that we got together.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I've been scrambling the last couple of weeks and with a whole bunch of messages coming in to do this kind of stuff, and I saw yours, and I was glad that you wanted to do it. And um, I've been feeling stressed out, but you felt good to sit and talk to me.
Yeah, similar, similar. So yeah, yeah, we ended here, and I will send you a mail with different dates, and you can pick one that fits and suits your schedule and so forth. So yeah, thank you very much, Mark,
Thank you, my friend. God bless.
and of course, where can people find you? Where can people find you?
Okay, okay. Well, get the book. The book's on Amazon. It's also on an outlet called Lulu, Lulu. You can purchase it through either one of them. And you can also go to boxersandwritersmagazine.com, all spelled out, boxersandwritersmagazine.com. And you click on there and you'll find a books page to purchase the book, but you're going to be purchasing it from either Amazon or Lulu. Um, I've got a Substack that I just moved in the last month and a half. I haven't been publishing, but so hopefully in the next week, 2 weeks, I'm going to get a few articles back up on there. It's uh, Mark Connor. Let me read it to you. Mark Connor, I believe it's Mark Connor. ICP IC Punch Drunk at Substack.com. It's right here. Hold on. I'll read it to you again just to make sure you got it actually. Yeah, it's Mark Connor, IC Punch Drunk .substack.com.
That's
So
great.
yeah,
Make sure to check it out. Can you just show up the book here as well, so people can see it?
yes.
Great. That's the book. Purchased on Lulu and Amazon. Perfect. And Instagram or Facebook or something like that? Do you have any account that
Um,
is
I'm I'm
official?
Mark- I'm I think it's ad writing boxer on Instagram, and then I'm Mark Connor on Facebook, and look, man, I'm trying to get myself, I'm trying to get my act together and be organized. So eventually, I'm going to be real serious and have all that stuff all professionally,
Yeah.
professional, looking professional and everything. But you actually on the Facebook, a lot of the podcasts I've been doing have been on there, and this will go up there. And I'll be getting on other stuff soon. Um, all the other kind of uh, you know edgy kind of social media.
Yeah. Perfect. Can I do maybe you have a YouTube channel or something like that as well? You're maybe planning, or you have? Or...
Yeah, I don't have one now. I mean, I've got I've got the one that they just give you when you're starting out, but I have never. I'm not really a producer, so I haven't been making videos. I mean, one of these days, hopefully I'll get around to it because I need to publicize myself better. But
Yeah.
uh,
Maybe some drill videos and some old fights and so forth. That would be great content.
that would be cool, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, that will be real cool. And yeah, so Also, Mark, I will put everything in the description for everyone to click on and check out your Substack and your book and whatnot. So, yeah, hopefully we'll talk soon again, and have a nice day, Mark, and thank you for coming on.
Just same yourself. I hope it's a great week for you, and I hope we're talking, within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, same
All right.
here, same here.
Bless
All
us,
right,
man.
man. Bless.
God
Bye.
bless. Bye.
So that's the end of episode 8. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And also, go ahead and purchase Mark Connor's book, It's About Time. 1 million copies sold for that. In our next episode, episode 9, we will be joined by Michael Diamant, or should I say Mikael Diamant, who is one of the leading voices behind the Swedish movement, the architectural uprising movement in Sweden. He works to challenge the growing trend of ugly, dehumanizing architecture and the demolition of beautiful historic buildings and the spread of soulless modernist design. His mission is to restore traditional aesthetics and human-scale beauties in our cities. So join us then, and until next time, have a great day. Bye.